you bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good football Friday, free agency Friday here on Birds 365. You got me, Jody Mack, along with my partner, John McMullen, to shoot the breeze about the Birds with you for the next 2 hours. We got two good guests scheduled to jump in over the course of the next two. Johnny Mack, I got to be honest. I had already gone to bed last night to watch the late night NCAA tournament games. I already knew that, all right, Gardner Minshew, we hardly knew that he was going elsewhere and signing with the Indianapolis Colts to reunite with Shane Steichen. But I did not know who the Eagles' backup quarterback was going to be until I put my computer on this morning and found out the do-the-deal guy, Marcus Mariota.
Do the deal. The deal is finally
how many
done.
Years too late is
8
Marcus
years,
Mariota showed up
I believe.
here?
8 years too late.
8 years after a good portion of the Eagle fan base.
Yeah, they didn't have to give up 2 first-round picks,
No.
Sam Bradford and Fletcher Cox, to get it done either. So,
Yeah, they did not. All they had to do was pay him less than the going rate for backup quarterbacks, but more than what Shane Steichen was willing to pay to get Gardner Minshew to come and be their backup quarterback. It is amazing when you talk backup QBs. It's the only position where you're very concerned about having the right one and then rooting for him to never get on the field.
Exactly.
Please just stay there on the sidelines, Marcus. We want Jalen Hurts to play all 17 games. But I was a fan of his potential to come here because I do believe if you've got a backup quarterback who can do things like, not exactly like, otherwise he'd be your starting quarterback. He's a light version of your starting quarterback. Marcus Mariota is still very good at running the ball and potentially running RPOs and zone reads and everything else. If you've got a guy who can somewhat assimilate what your starting quarterback does when he's in there, it's a leg up. It's a plus. You got to be as good a quarterback at doing everything else, which I think Mariota is compared to all the other backup quarterbacks that have signed this offseason. And if you get the added bonus of the change in the way that you call plays when you put your backup quarterback into the game is negligible, I just think that's a plus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in the category of let's hope we never get to see him play. I mean, and that's where you are with when you have a good quarterback in the NFL. That's where everybody is. They never want to see the backup. But I have no problem with him being the backup. I mean, he's a capable guy, ton of experience. That's what you want in a backup quarterback for the most part. Somebody who's not going to fall apart in a big moment. And you hope he can cobble together a win or two. You know, the history says Jalen Hurts is going to miss a couple games. Again, fingers crossed that doesn't happen. But I have no problem with him being the backup quarterback. It's a solid signing at $5 million. It was clearly the budget, $5 million, and they'll have some incentives if he does have to play, which is the worst case scenario. So he's got a little bit of a little bit of a bump on the back end if he has to pay, and that's typically what you do with a veteran quarterback. It's a smart signing. It's a smart signing, you know, and I don't even want to call it a big name. I think fans are way too excited about it. You know, big name trap. I'm going to call it the familiar name trap with Marcus Mariota and Greedy Williams, who we'll get to in a moment. Familiar names, recognizable names. But I mean, we got an 8-year sample size here. This is not a starting level quarterback in the NFL. Again, different things. Solid backup, but you don't want him on the field. And that's the good part of when you have a great quarterback. Other teams, and you brought up Gardner going with Shane Steichen, you know, they don't have an answer yet. And at least in theory, from Gardner Minshew's perspective, because I was thinking about this this morning, I'm with you because of the day before. I was up till 3 a.m. So with the Slay nonsense, so I was out, and Howie's screwing me. Thanks, Howie, doing everything late nights. But you know, I was thinking about it, and I'm saying, well, you know, Gardner has a slight opportunity if Indy goes the way we're thinking, top 10 pick, obviously he's got a slight opportunity to be a bridge quarterback early in the season. And what does that opportunity give you? If you play well, they're not taking you off the field. And we all know they're taking a quarterback in the top 5. He's going to be the guy. But it's a slight opportunity. Here with Marcus, he's behind an entrenched starter. He's not getting on the field unless there's a disaster, an injury, or anything like that. So that's kind of the debate you have as a potential backup.
Sure.
Talked about Jacoby Brissett. Now he got more money, but he also got an opportunity in Washington. But I like the signing. You know, they couldn't get Jacoby. Marcus would have been my number 2, but I wouldn't get excited about all the Chip Kelly nonsense. And we've seen enough of this guy to know what he is.
And one of the things that Marcus Mariota does bring to town on his resume that I don't know that any of the, Jimmy G, but he's going to be a guy who's actually going to get a chance to start. I'm talking about the ones who you can recognize right now as unquestioned backup with their new team. Got a playoff win. Those other guys don't have playoff wins. You hope that he doesn't need to play in a playoff game for the Eagles this year because Jalen Hurts will be ready to start whatever playoff games the Eagles are in, but he does have one to his resume that others do not. So, yeah, I like the signing. I think that that was as good as they could do for the price that they were playing in. We've been noting that other backup quarterbacks were getting as much as $10 million. Mariota only signs for $5 million. But Minshew was only 3.5. Okay, put them together. Who would you prefer, Marcus Mariota or Gardner Minshew? I take Mariota. So the extra $1.5 million, and both have incentives built into their contracts. Yeah, for that extra $1.5 million, I'd rather have the better player. And for the half price tag that all those other $10 million quarterbacks came at, there's no question in my mind that Mariota is a better choice. If you're paying somebody $10 million as compared to $5 million, give me the guy for $5 million who I actually think is as good a fit, if not better a fit, than any of all those other guys. So I absolutely like the signing yesterday from an Eagle perspective. You mentioned Greedy Jackson coming in.
Greedy Williams.
I say Jackson, my boy, my bad. Greedy Williams, former second-round pick back in 2019. I remember doing my study work for him in the 2019 draft. Legit second-rounder, went where most people had him plugged in. Has had a, let's be honest, disappointing career. Second-round draft pick, you hope that the guy establishes himself and you get to a point where you want to give him a second contract. That's not the case. Kind of like Rashad Penny, injuries have been an issue with his career. Missed an entire year back in 2020. But when he's played, he has not played badly. He has been a good special teams player for the Browns. I'll take whoever's word for that says it, because I'm not breaking down game film of the Browns special teams, but he had been a regular on their special teams. it's a backup move. And that's part of the general manager's job during an off season is surely you got to fill holes in your starting lineup, and Eagles will still have one or two of those. We'll get to CJ DJ in a second. But part of it is you don't want to miss out on the opportunity to improve your backups. And last year, when the Eagles needed to tap into with an injury to Avonte Maddox, their backup cornerbacks, be it slot or outside, there was a drop-off. There was, in my estimation, a significant drop-off. Is Greedy the answer? I'm not sure, but if that's what the Eagles saw him and were aggressive enough while still filling holes in their starting lineup to go out and get a better backup piece, I'll give Howie the benefit of the doubt in this one.
I like the signing from this perspective. One, I got to see the contract, got some text out. Hopefully I get these things this morning while we're on the air, but it's pretty early. I think it's going to be pretty very similar to Rashad Penny, very desirable from the Eagles perspective. So I don't think the contract's going to be much of an issue at all. I like it from this perspective. He gets to sit and learn behind Darius Slay and James Bradbury for a year. And this is, you mentioned the slot. Forget about the slot. He can't play the slot. He's 6'2". He's a big, rangy guy. So that, to me, that's two different positions. You're right. Let the Eagles have some versatility when they move CJ into the slot, if they get CJ back, or vice versa, safety slot versatility with Avonte Maddox, both of them, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. And we'll see about CJ. But obviously he's not getting the deal he wants. From Greedy's perspective, he gets to learn behind two of the smartest cornerbacks in the NFL. And he's got some talent. And that's a worthy roll of the dice, just like Rashad Penny's a worthy roll of the dice because, yeah, the injury history is the injury history, but he can play. You've already seen Penny. He can play, just if he can stay on the field. In the case of Greedy, we don't know if he can play, but sitting behind those two guys, if there's anything there, they're going to get it out of them. And from that perspective, I think it's a solid roll of the dice, as I said, solid gamble. And that's what the Eagles are doing. I mean, they're smart, they're cost effective, budgets, you get talent. But in a lot of ways, this is like we always talk about pedigree with your favorite player, Derek Barnett. Same thing in Cleveland. They're like, get this guy out of here. And Philadelphia, they're like, a second round pick. He's got some talent. He runs a 4.37. He's 6'2". Give him a chance. And that's the way it should be. All right, he was a second round pick back in years ago. All right, forget about that. Doesn't count anymore. Now he's got a chance to learn under the two of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, but they're aging past 30. You got to start thinking about the future. Solid move.
Now, much like with Rashad Penny, injuries are a big factor in trying to decide whether a guy can play or not. It's still projection. You're working off what you believed when a guy doesn't get a chance to get out there. Cleveland decided not to play him. He was certainly more eligible and playing just special teams this year. But when injuries factor in, that's what makes it a roll of the dice. And sometimes you come up craps. If you sign a player who's got an injury history and when you give him the chance to play, doesn't get the job done, you can't just go, well, we didn't know. Well, yeah, you did. When you signed him to the contract, you said you believed he could play. Then if he gets the chance and he can't, guess what? You got it wrong. But sometimes if a guy doesn't get a chance to play because of injury and then he can stay healthy and play well for you, well, that's a major win. There's with the two signings that the Eagles have made for the undervalue, not a lot of payment, certainly more upside than downside. They're banking on upside. They're banking on these two guys staying healthy. Now, best case scenario, kind of like the quarterback position, you hope Greedy doesn't need to get on the field because you've got you're still.
Well, that was the great thing about corner. Slay and Bradbury stayed healthy for the most part. Slay had a couple concussion troubles where he missed parts of games, but never a game. and Bradbury was healthy the whole season. So they never had to go to Zach McPherson on the outside or Josh Jobe on the outside or anybody else on the outside. And I don't think that would have went well, except for a very small period with Zach. And here, now they have Greedy Williams to throw in the mix. And it doesn't necessarily mean Zach McPherson isn't going to be the top backup, but it gives you a lot of versatility and it gives you competition. And Zach, I've always thought, is better suited to play inside anyway. So maybe they move him inside to be the backup slot because now you have a more tangible option as a backup outside the numbers. So from that standpoint, you can see some of the versatility it might give Sean Desai, but it all comes down to can he play or can he play? And I think it's a great situation for a young player. If you're a young corner in this league and you get to learn behind Slay and Bradbury, it doesn't get any better than that.
And hopefully something Greedy can take advantage of this year. All right, one quick thought on the news yesterday, not a player involved signing. Well, I guess it is an extension involved signing before we punch up our first guest. There were several reports out there that Darius Slay was coming back to the Eagles on a no new money deal. Well, we still don't have all the details of the contract, but I can guarantee you there's new money attached to it because it's a 2-year contract extension. So his contract stays in place this year, maybe reworked, but still in place, and 2 more years on the back end with $23 million guaranteed. That entire guarantee is not in this year. I can guarantee you that, John McMullen. So there is guaranteed money in future years. The devil will be in the details, and they haven't come out just yet. But there was a bit of a commitment by the Eagles to get this done and be able to redo Slay's deal for this season.
Yeah, it was a compromise. This is going to be very Eagles tilted. And we'll see when it comes out. As you said, the devil's always in the details. My guess is it's 2 years, and he's guaranteed $23 million. So if you think at it from that perspective, $11.5 million per year, who's set to make $17.5 million a year. That's pretty good from the Eagles' perspective. And that's what I think ultimately it's going to be. But you work it in a way where the player is not going to feel bad because, the contracts in the NFL are very complicated. And, people are already going, Slay better keep himself in shape so he can play in 2025. He ain't playing on the 3rd year of this deal. Trust me. If he plays well, he's not going to want to play on the 3rd year of this deal. And he's going to want more money. But at that age, it's going to be very Eagles tilted. But they did right. And the bottom line is his guaranteed money was up. So he was set to make $17.5 million this year. And if he's on the roster week 1, that money's guaranteed as a vested veteran. But you got to get to week 1 before that money's guaranteed. Now he's got $23 million of it guaranteed. So he got a little bit of a bump, as you mentioned, a little bit of new money. But it's better from the Eagles standpoint, if that makes sense. And that $26 million cap number goes away, right, which is why you can sign the Marcus Mariotas and the Greedy Williams of the world and do some other maneuvering as well.
Right. So we'll wait on how it's actually played out, spread out over the course of the 3 years. That's the thing that surprised me. And oh, by the way, you're right. That 3rd year will never see the light of day. 2024 is now in play. 2023 is locked in. 2024 is in play. 2025 is a pipe dream. Yeah, he's never going to see that. The Eagles aren't.
And honestly, Jody, I guarantee you, if he plays well, I guarantee you 2024 is a pipe dream. They're going to be talking about another adjustment to the contract. So this is about salary cap relief in the short term and saving face for the player a little bit. And the Eagles got it done. Credit to Howie Roseman and Jake Rosenberg.
He is John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Appreciate you streaming in on Football Free Agency Week. Birds have done quite well, as a matter of fact. That's my opinion. John's giving you his, and we're going to get a third coming up next. Our buddy, Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, the host of Good Morning NFC East, is going to jump in with us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
It's the Mac and Mac, Birds 365 Friday here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We got a JAKIB Media YouTube channel contributor to join us, the host of Good Morning NFC East and also football writer for CBSSports.com. Jeff Kerr jumps in. All right, Jeff Kerr, draw a line right here, right now. St. Patty's Day. Happy St. Patty's Day, by the way. Howie Roseman's grade for handling the Eagles offseason for Jeff Kerr, knowing it could change, go up or down going forward, but right here, right now, what kind of grade would you give Howie?
Well, considering a week ago, guys, I did not think Darius Slay and James Bradbury would be back on this team. Hey.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think he's manipulated things very well, and he'll do better. This is where, sort of the second phase is where he kind of sets himself apart. And I always say from other GMs and contingencies is where Howie tends to set himself apart as well. But, also the gambling deals. Rashad Penny makes a lot of sense. Greedy Williams makes a lot of sense. They might end up being nothing, but it's not going to cost the Eagles anything to take a look at them. I always say about Howie, he makes smart decisions. And when you stack smart decisions, they don't always work. Robert Quinn didn't work. Jody's favorite player, Derek Barnett, he likes to bring him up. That didn't work last year. But most of his decisions worked. And that's because they're well thought out, well informed decisions. That's how I put it. How do you see it?
Yeah, so when the Eagles signed Rashad Penny, he was one of those guys I was kind of thinking in the back of my head. I'm like, Eagles could probably get him on the cheap. And I was thinking maybe 4 or 5 million. No, they get him for 2, which is an awesome
1.6. He's got to hit incentives to get the 2.
To get the 2,
yeah,
right.
Exactly. He actually has to play. But I mean, if you look at his last 10 games, he's run for 1,017 yards, average 6.2 yards per carry, and he fits the offense better than what Miles Sanders did. And this is what I love about free agency sometimes. A lot of smart GMs are starting to get like this. Put players in a position where they can succeed. The Eagles are doing this with Rashad Penny. I think Carolina's doing that with Miles Sanders. I think Indianapolis is doing this with Gardner Minshew. As crazy as it sounds. And now the Eagles are doing this with Marcus Mariota. You're right.
By the way, guys, I got to meet Rashad yesterday. But really nice guy, by the way. He went around to every reporter there, introduced himself, which you don't see. Brandon Graham does it, but very few others. So number one, he made a good first impression with everybody, but and is he big? I said,
dude.
well, the Eagles signed a linebacker. I mean, he has got 4 arms like you wouldn't believe, and the neck, but he's incredibly elusive as well on top of it. It's pretty impressive. It's weird he had so many injury problems because he's so stinking big. You'd think everything would just bounce off of him. I don't know if it's going to work. And Miles is, for whatever reason, as you mentioned, maybe it was just the pitch yet, trying to kick it out too much. Wasn't a great receiver. Bottom line, 1,300-yard back, 11 touchdowns. That's really good production. And Rashad Penny has been injured. There's, as you point out, with those last 16, 17 games, well, you got to go a ways back to find those last 16, 17 games because he's never on the field.
Yeah, I think he's played. I think he's been injured more games than he's played since he's entered the league. And I mean, it's a shame because he is a really good player when he's healthy. And last year, it was kind of that weird situation where they draft Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was going to be the guy in Seattle at some point, but Rashad Penny, outside of an injury, Kenneth Walker was not seeing the field the way people wanted him to because of Rashad Penny. And Rashad Penny did everything he could to keep that job, and then he got hurt. And I thought Rashad Penny was the name everybody kind of forgot on that loaded free agent market. But I'll tell you what, I think it's one of those, like you said, John, it's a low risk, high reward move for the Eagles. But if he's healthy, you put him in with Kenny Gainwell, you put him in with Boston Scott, say they draft a running back at some point, that could be a really nice combination for them. I think their offense, in a way, did get better. And again, this is if Rashad Penny is healthy.
Other moves the Eagles have made here since free agency started. Just the other day, they brought back Fletcher Cox for another year. 1-year deal. Again, 1-year deals can only be so good or so bad because they are as short-term as they are. $10 million for Fletcher Cox. He played well last year, up to a $14 million number. Not for me, but well. $10 million projecting going forward for this year. Continuity counts. History with the team counts. But the bottom line is, can you play to a $10 million level? Do you think Fletcher Cox can do that?
Well, when there was another shooter that reportedly offered him more, and John, maybe you can clarify this a little bit better. Did you hear like 12, 13 million the Jets offered him, maybe even 14?
Yeah. I heard 12, 13 million for Fletcher. And Jets are obvious because of Joe Douglas and Cleveland. There was a lot of talk about Cleveland because of Jim Schwartz and Andrew Berry and Cat Raish. He definitely could have gotten more. So was he going to get 14? No. But so 12, 13 makes sense. But I don't know if that's original reporting or people are just kind of connecting the dots. But yeah, I got it from 2 different people that he definitely turned down money elsewhere. How high that was, I can't tell you. But common sense says it was 12, 13.
And then this is where I kind of wish the social media world would understand. $10 million, that's not bad for a defensive tackle of Fletcher Cox's status. I mean, these guys are getting paid. Look at what Javon Hargrave just got. He's getting $21 million from the 49ers.
Oh, yeah. D tackles get paid.
Yeah, they get paid. And I think they needed a veteran defensive tackle in there. And does that rule them out from potentially drafting a young guy? No, but I think it helps Jordan Davis. I think it helps Milton Williams and, Marlon Teopalutu. I actually got it right for guys like that.
Chewy Pelotu. You got Chewy Pelotu. Chewy's my guy.
At some point, I'm going to remember how to say that name. But anyway, it's kind of crazy to me how making $10 million as a defensive tackle for a guy who had 7 sacks last year and was getting pressure on the quarterback is frowned upon. And, I saw
especially in this town, Jeff. I talk about it all the time. I don't get the Fletcher Cox hate in this town. It's not everybody. It's always a small percentage. This is one of the best defensive players in the history of this franchise. Who
probably should get his number retired when it's all said and done.
Oh my God, he might go to the Hall of Fame. I was talking to Jody. Well, if Gary Myers on in the second hour, we can ask Gary. He was on the All Decade team. Gary's a voter. He was on the All Decade team in the 2010s. This is a 4-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowl selection. I'm not saying he's a slam dunk, but he's in the conversation to be in a Hall of Fame level player. And I don't get it, man. Because he doesn't have Brandon's personality? I don't know.
I had to rank the top after the Rams won the Super Bowl last year because of Donald, will he or will he not retire? He didn't. But they said in the event he does, why don't you go back in your history books and rank the top 10 defensive players of all time? And I was curious where I would fit Donald in there. If you looked at Donald's 7 years based on dominance, he was top 5 just based on what he did.
He's one of the best players of all time.
Yeah, and I just got tired of hearing Fletcher Cox. Well, he's not Aaron Donald. I go, well, I hate to tell you, no one's Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's in a league of his own.
Yeah.
I guess I'll play devil's advocate here since you want answers, Johnny Mac. Was Fletcher Cox a $14 million a year player last year?
Probably not.
No,
probably not.
Okay. So this year he's making 10. Will he be a $10 million a year player?
For this team, yes.
Right.
I think, I look at it in a different way. I look at it as about, Jeff brought up, you're talking about Jordan Davis and Milton Williams and Marlon Tuipulotu, all young players. I think there's value, just like I was talking with Greedy Williams, and we'll get to Greedy with Jeff. Got to get greedy with Greedy. I think there's value to playing behind Darius Slay and James Bradbury for him. Maybe something clicks. I think there's value to playing behind Fletcher Cox for young players. So I think it's about more than just what happens on the field. But that's
we'll see. I don't, and you would know better than me because you're down there and you're talking to these guys. I don't remember any specific quotes from either Milton and or Marlon that the tutelage they're getting.
They talk about Fletch all the time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that locker room loves Fletcher Cox. He's not in the BG stratosphere, but who is? But I'll tell you what, those guys love Fletcher Cox in there.
Yeah, BG's more vocal, so it's more obvious with BG because he's the nicest human being in the world. He's got the most energy in the world to the point I can't even understand how he's got as much energy as he does. And nobody's Brandon Graham. I just talked about Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny introducing himself. That's the first time that's happened in Philadelphia since Brandon Graham. Doesn't happen a lot that people are that outgoing. So Fletcher goes about it a little bit different. He's way more low key. But as far as the players, Jody, they have tremendous reverence for Fletcher Cox. Number one, because he's an awesome player and he has been for a really long time. And number two, because he's really well schooled on how to play, similar to Slay and Bradbury at corner. Very savvy player, understands the role, so they sort of gravitate towards him.
I'll tell you one thing I really like about Cox too. Just seeing him in the locker room after games and seeing him in training camp. That guy knows how to stay in shape. I mean, you look at him, you're like, okay, this isn't the pinnacle of excellence here, but for a football player, he's in really good shape, and you can just tell like he does take care of his body. He wants to play in this league a long time, and for a guy who's 32, I mean, you see some bodies deteriorate. It's not Fletch.
That's funny you say that, because a lot of people say, Fletcher played way too many reps for way too many years, and maybe that's why the downtick started. And every year the Eagles would talk about, we got to take some reps off Fletcher Cox's plate. And every year they're like in the fourth quarter, well, I'm not taking Fletcher off the field, and he's out there and he's out there and he's out there and he's out there. But people would say he's not in shape. I mean, certain people, not a lot of people, football shape. I think it's because Fletcher is a sweater, man. I mean, like one television light shows up and he's sweating, especially when it's hot. So
he sweats when I interview him.
Yeah.
It's just it's the way he is. I don't know, and he's good at answering all the questions. It's just like you're right there. Like you put a camera in his face, he's just like, oh, okay, and then here, let me get a towel, and I'm like, all right, Fletch. I'm like, I see your what's that term? Easy perspirant, I guess. I forget what the.
All right, and I'll give you the only other question that I have about Fletcher Cox, and again, this is working off the assumption that the Jets did offer more money. I've seen no confirmation on the Jets' end, but some very good and on-point reporters have reported that's the fact, so I'll accept it to a point. So that's what it costs to keep him if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. They had to pay that amount. At some point, you got to turn your roster over. And Fletcher is of an age where you need to accept that he's going to have to earn the amount of money that you're going to pay him, because you're not developing someone who's going to step in the future. That at some point you got to put younger guys into the lineup. And the Eagles, while they've done a very good job and they're back in it again to win this year and coming off what they did last year, that's the way I would have handled it if I were Howie Roseman. They're keeping some older guys in place. And if you want to continue to be a team that's in the Super Bowl mix year after year after year after year, then you got to churn a couple positions and you got to get younger. And they're not doing that with Fletcher Cox this year. They're not doing that with Brandon Graham this year. They're keeping some guys in place. And oh, by the way, Brandon Graham earned his money this year, unquestioned. For the amount that he's making this upcoming year, I'll project more so he's worth what he's getting paid than Fletcher is worth what he's getting paid. That's the only other question you can have about Fletcher Cox. And I don't think it's unfair to put those questions out there. Do I think Fletcher Cox stinks? No. Do I think the Eagles made a mistake by re-signing Fletcher Cox? No. But do I think you can at least say, well, I'm not sure about it, or it's not a slam dunk winner? I don't think that's questioning Fletcher Cox or the Eagles. It's just evaluating the situation, and I think any Eagle fan, yours truly included, can do so with the last 2 years contracts and production for Fletcher Cox.
I always look at it this way, Jody. Is a rookie going to put up 40 pressures and 7 sacks? Say he does that again this year. Is a rookie going to do that? Like, is a rookie really going to be better than a guy like Darius Slay at this point? Probably not. But you could draft that rookie and groom that rookie under those two, and then when it's time to move on from them, say next year or in 2 years, I think this could be Fletcher Cox's last year with the Eagles. I'm starting to think that.
Yeah, well, it's a fair point by Jody, and it's not just Fletcher. It's BG. It's even Jason Kelsey. It's it's Darius Slay. It's this is an aging team. A lot of key players post 30. And that's part of the issue. I mean, they're proven, so they want to get paid. And then we just went through this with Slay. They're good. They're still really good players. But if you're smart, you know the history of this league and you know the decline is coming. So the old adage in sports, whoever, I think Branch Rickey gets credit for it. I don't know if he's the first to say it, but it's better to give up on a player a year early than a year late.
Yep.
And that's always a difficult tightrope. It's even more difficult when that player has had success for your team. I would say the Eagles have the core four, right? Well, the real core four, I'm going too much baseball, is the Yankees, the Derek Jeter Yankees, right? Jeter wasn't the player he was at the end, but the Yankees almost had to let him play it out because of what he meant to the organization, what he meant to the team. Similar situation with the Eagles in a bunch of these circumstances. It's difficult. I don't know how you
they're pillars.
Go down that road.
They're franchise pillars. Like it's Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce. Like I remember, I think I saw on Twitter last week someone said, "Well, they should get rid of Jason Kelce because." It's that whole. I'm like, why? I'm like, what are you?
Kelsey's like Jeter. No, he goes as long as he wants.
Exactly. And Jason Kelce wants to play with the cane at 45 years old. He can still block people. More power to him.
Yeah. It's part of it. I mean, you can't just. These are human beings as well, and I know everybody doesn't realize that, or a lot of people don't realize that, but. In the case of Kelce, though, yeah, I saw that same thing. I'm like, come on, where are we at? Where are we at in sports? We're so worried about the future. What everything's always worried about the future. The guy was an all-pro. He's playing, and now Kelce himself, because he's very humble, will say, "No, I'm not playing like I once did." As a nod to we can't see it, and he gives credit to Stoutland for putting him in great spots, and he gives credit for Isaac and Landon for being so good around him. But he's being humble. You see the film. I mean, he's knocking people on their asses. He's downfield. He looks as good as he's ever been. Now, only he knows how he feels physically. But how you could say, "Oh, let's move on from Jason Kelce because we drafted Cam Jurgens." That's just stupid asset management. No, I mean, it's the Sam Hinkie level of thinking.
Well, my favorite is you can't sit a second round pick 2 years. Why not? Aaron Rodgers sat.
Yeah.
It worked out pretty well.
3 years. He sat for 3 years.
Jordan Love sat for 3 years. I mean, he might be based on Green Bay's trajectory, he may be the next Aaron Rodgers for all we know.
It'll be the Jets quarterback in 2037.
Exactly.
Speaking of the human element, John, I kind of want to pick your brain on this too. Jody, I'm taking the host share from you here, but how about our boy CJ Gardner-Johnson right now?
Oh boy, tweeting and deleting. CJ.
Man, it's what? I didn't even see what he tweeted. But I get asked every day. You got any updates on him? Got any updates on them? Because of I reported Monday, and I said, "Oh no, I don't, or else I tweet about it."
Well, the tweet that he deleted last night was "The disrespect continues," and he put it up and he took it down shortly thereafter.
His market isn't what he thought it was going to be.
Right. And everybody wants to look at through their own prism as the way they probably should. But that's just the fact, Jack. When you hit free agency and your agent has the availability to talk to all 32 teams and you're not getting the money that you think you should get, guess what? It's 32-1. Yeah, you get your vote. You get to air your opinion, but the other 32 parties get theirs. And when they're on one side and you're on the other, that's not disrespect. That's miscalculation, CJGJ. You overvalued yourself if you believed that you were getting this knockdown, drop dead contract, and it's just not out there. And oh, by the way, we're now 4 days into this, so it isn't like it's about to just surface at some point. Yeah, he over-evaluated himself, and I don't know where it's going to go because if he's feeling disrespected, he should be feeling disrespected by all 32 teams, which includes the Philadelphia Eagles. No more, no less. Maybe he thinks they should be willing to pay me more because I contributed to a Super Bowl team last year. I don't know if it's going to help the Eagles or hurt the Eagles.
He does think that, Jody, because I don't know if you guys go on the Instagram sphere, but he said, if I played all year, I'd have 12 interceptions. I'm like, well, he's selling himself. That's clear as day.
Yeah. Yeah, it is difficult because you do want that you see it all the time with veteran players. They're often not willing to take pay cuts from their original teams, but willing to go elsewhere to play less because they feel disrespected by their original teams. Um, but you're right, Jody. I mean, it's a vote of the league entirely. And one of the reasons CJ isn't getting the money he wants is because he's on Twitter doing this nonsense. And, I always say a lot of teams don't want to deal with that. Now, some do, some don't. But you never want to lower the field if you can, if you can control it. And his market is not what people thought his market would be. And that's good for the Eagles, unless, as Jody pointed out, he feels completely disrespected by the Eagles. And I can't read his mind. He might be talking about his video game. He's always playing video games.
Yeah, he's always doing that stuff.
Yeah. So, it might not even be about football. Well, it most likely is. I mean, but it could be other teams. It could be the Eagles. He's a tough guy to gauge. But I know he's not getting $14 million. I know that.
John, it's funny. So when I was talking to people in that camp, I did have a trusted source saying to me, he's not going to get near that franchise tag amount. You know that. And I was like, okay, this was 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, so, what are we talking here? Maybe 10, 11 million. And I never got a response back on that. So I was.
Yeah, what I got, and I've said on the show, and I've told Jody, the Eagles really liked Marcus Williams last year. I mean, really liked him as a player. And they bailed out. Yeah, and they bailed out when Baltimore went too high. And who I was talking to told me they're not paying CJ what they were going to pay Marcus. So,
and Marcus got $14 million a year.
He got 12. He got 12.
That's right. That's right.
I said, and my first, things go up. That's sort of baked in. The salary cap goes up. So Marcus, if he was a free agent this year, would have gotten a little bit more than he got last year. That's sort of how things work. But he was pretty adamant, said, no, they're disciplined, focused. They're not going to go above their number. And I think he was right. So we'll see how it shakes out.
So there were a couple players that I was told that come back to us, test the market, and come back to us.
Oh, yeah.
Ironically, two of them aren't here anymore. One was Gardner Minshew, and the other was TJ Edwards. And the third is CJ Gardner-Johnson. So I'm really curious to see what ends up with that, because two of them, they're just not Eagles anymore.
And how we played this game with Slay as well. He said, look, go test your market. And, then you got to have the come to Jesus moment and say, I'm not getting what I'm getting.
And I think Slay really didn't want to leave at the end of the day. I think he's just like, you know what? Grass is fine here. I don't need to go somewhere else.
Here's the one thing I will, if I'm in CJ Gardner-Johnson's inner circle, that I'm kind of leaning on, if he's selling me I'm being disrespected, I'm just not taking less argument. This isn't a great safety draft class. There's one safety, Branch from Alabama, who's a legit first-round draft pick. Everyone else after that is second round at best. So for the teams that don't have a safety yet and or have a hole at safety, Eagles being one of them, you're not plugging and playing an NFL first-round draft pick. Just grab them and throw them in there and know you're good to go. This is not a good safety draft class. So maybe that's why, at least from an agent standpoint, they're clinging to, we're being disrespected. We're being under-offered at this point.
It's tough to think that, though, because I'm curious. I mean, there's obviously, if I'm looking at it correctly, just based on the safety market, he's got to make over $7 billion, but I don't think he's making 10 or 11. So, I mean, when you look at what Marcus Epps and guys like that are getting paid, you're starting to think, okay, this is probably where it's going to end up. Now, whether it's like what John said, does he take an offer from, say, the Broncos, which I do know the Broncos are the other team interested. I think that's the other thing he's upset too. I think he thought there were going to be multiple bidders in here. And some people say Bengals, and I haven't heard anything about Cincinnati.
No, they drafted that kid from Michigan last year as
Dax
the
Hill,
replacement for Jesse Bates. So,
and they signed Michael Thomas too. So
Yeah.
re-signed him. So
I think if he gets 10, 11 at this point, it's a big win for CJ. It's a big win for Kevin Connor, his agent. I think they're going to land at 8, 9. Anything less than 8, 9, it's a big loss.
Yeah,
that's how I would.
And if it's with the Eagles, and if he does stay with the Eagles, man, I'll tell you what, they're in a much better position than the Chiefs right now. I love Jawan Taylor, the player, but I can't believe the Chiefs paid him and didn't pay Orlando Brown when it seems like the only thing that really separated those two was guaranteed money.
Yeah, and I'm surprised Cincinnati went. But Cincinnati has changed when they're close to being a Super Bowl team and they realize it, and they were a Super Bowl team. They're going for it. They're typically known as one of the cheaper organizations in the NFL. And they gave Brown more guaranteed money than I think any offensive lineman in history. Is that correct, Jeff?
That is. So there was a team in that division I heard was after him, and that was Pittsburgh. And I tried to reach out to Brown, but I'm sure he's been busy. And I said, "Hey, is it true Pittsburgh offered you?" And he never responded. But then again, last time I talked to Brown was at the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what his other offers were. But I think Cincinnati said, you know what? We're not paying Jesse Bates. We're not paying the safety this money. We got young guys, but we still have some money to spend. Let's do it on him. Let's protect our biggest asset, Joe Burrow. And now I think you can move Jonah Williams over the right tackle. And I don't think La'el Collins is going to be a Bengal too much longer.
All right, let me do a little agent math here, and if you think I'm overstepping or I'm evaluating this incorrectly, please say so. Jesse Bates got an average of 16 and change million this year. I think it's just above 16, but it's basically 16 million per, with a bunch of it guaranteed. Marcus Epps got $6 million. If you're Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, do you not feel that you're closer to Bates than you are Marcus Epps?
He feels that way.
I mean, Jesse Bates is on a different stratosphere in terms of safeties. Let's just be real here.
But definitely, I mean, that's why I said if CJ, I'm banking at this point, I think he's going to get 8 to 9 million. If he gets anything more than that, it's a win. If he gets anything less than that, it's a loss. But I think that's where he's settling in. And the market says what the market says. And you know what? If he wasn't a pain in the you-know-what at times, maybe he would be up at 11 million. Maybe he would be up.
This is what million. I kind of wish the fan base would understand. Yes, he's very popular on Twitter. And he was very popular on Saints Twitter too. But I'm telling you, there are people out there that are in the know. Is this guy more trouble than he's worth? And you're right, John, with the whole social media stuff. I mean, he didn't give the Eagles any problems last year. But
there was, that's not necessarily true. And Marcus, our buddy Marcus Hayes, did a piece on Denard Wilson leaving, and one of Denard's extra jobs was being babysitter for CJ. I mean, the Eagles knew they were taking on a guy who could be an issue at times, but they felt they had a strong locker room, which they do.
And Slay and Bradbury helped.
Yeah. And it worked out. And that's why I think this is the best place for them, by the way, continuing, because they still have Slay and Bradbury. They don't have Denard Wilson, so we'll see. They don't technically have even a secondary coach right now, so we'll see how that shakes out. But the Eagles, are well versed in it. Other teams are not, and one of the reasons the Saints gave up on a talented player was because two reasons. I mean, the bigger reason, they didn't want to pay him what they projected he was going to get, and there's like maybe two. And I saw Jalen Hurts. Remember, this is Jalen Hurts, the leader of all leaders. walk out of the locker room once when Chauncey was being a little bit too loud. So, take that for what it's worth.
All right, last thing on Chauncey and last thing for Jeff Kerr. Any chance that CJGJ with the Eagles or elsewhere signs a 1-year, I'm going to be on my best behavior deal? If his agent is advising them, the whole social media thing and acting out, and it probably has curbed our market, you kind of need to prove to the league that you can be a good team guy and you can keep yourself in check when need be. Any chance he does a 1-year deal with either Philly or anybody else?
It's a bet on yourself deal. I think the Eagles would like to sign him to multi-years and give him some guaranteed money there, but I don't think it's going to be like a 4 or 5 year deal. I honestly think it's going to be, again, this is just me speculating. This is just my opinion. I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years, if I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that a little bit before. I forget who we were talking about. Jalen Hurts. Joe Banner keeps recommending to Jalen Hurts to take a short-term contract, get back on the market because you're going to make a lot of money. I would recommend Chauncey take a shorter contract, get back on the market, and have a chance to make more money. If I was Kevin Connor, that's what I would do.
And there are 2 people that could be in his corner if he plays with them the next couple of years, Slay and Bradbury, that are well respected around this league. I mean, I still can't believe the outpouring support from other players when this whole Slay thing was going down. Like, his former teammates and guys like that knows him. It's like, oh, like Slay, like what's going on, man? And as well as I do, John, with Bradbury, like there were so many people happy for Bradbury, especially after.
Well, players are obviously they stick together in general, but
those 2 are well respected.
Oh man, I mean, Slay is again, it was funny. His wife, Jennifer, is active on Twitter, Eagles Twitter as well.
She's very active on Twitter.
And, a lot of people, as they are wont to do, when Darius said goodbye, because remember, it was Slay who said goodbye on Twitter and, essentially confirming he was leaving and getting cut. A lot of people turned on him right away. Oh, Bradbury's better. Oh, he had a bad second half.
Do you like what Jen tweeted? I saved the receipts. That's all I did all day.
Yeah. They're in trouble. But inside the league, I mean, he's one of those guys who, everybody knows. You talk to the receivers, everybody knows. Jefferson, AJ, in-house. Everybody knows what Slay is. And Slay's one of the few real cornerback ones. I always compare it to starting pitchers in baseball. I've said that, Jody. There's 30 because there's got to be 30, right? There's 30 teams, right? There's 30 because there's got to be 30. There's not legit 30 number ones. Well, there's 32 cornerback ones in the NFL because there has to be. But there aren't 32 legitimate cornerback ones.
I would describe the Eagles the same way I describe the Phillies. They're lucky enough to have 2 aces. Yeah. I think they've got 2 aces. It's not there's 1 per team, but if the number is 32, certainly Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler are 2 of the best 32 starters in Major League Baseball. And
but that's my point. It's
Bradbury and Slay are 2 of the top 32 cornerbacks.
There's probably 10. Yeah, they're definitely 2 of the top 32. But there's probably, my point is there's probably 10 true cornerback ones, and Slay's in that category.
If I had to say this.
But do you put Bradbury in that category?
No. I'll say this. The Eagles got 2 of the top 15 cornerbacks in football. Bottom line.
I'd go 2 of the top 20.
Well, I'm basing this off last year. Just based off last year.
Oh, yeah. Last year, Bradbury was tremendous.
Last year, Bradbury was the better of the 2 cornerbacks.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Yeah, I think Slay had a lot to do with that. But
yeah, so do I.
Yeah, no, we'll disagree on that one. Bradbury, to me, had the better year. Now, will I guarantee you that Bradbury has better this year? No, maybe Slay has a bounce back year and goes back by him. But Bradbury did go by him for my ranking and rating this year. We'll see how it plays. But either way, any way you slice it, Eagles got two of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League. JK, good stuff as always, brother. We'll be reading you on CBS. Looking forward to the return of Good Morning NFC East down the road. Thanks for jumping in today.
Always a pleasure, guys. I love coming on here.
Jeff,
thanks,
Carter
Jeff.
with us,
Appreciate it.
Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We still got plenty more Eagles stuff to do. And now in less than 20 minutes, we'll be joined by our pal Gary Myers, longtime NFL writer, columnist, and NFL author. For years, he covered first the Dallas Cowboys, then the New York Giants. So he's been covering the NFC East forever and doing a lot of national television work. So GM Gary Myers is going to join us, about 18, 19.
And Hall of Fame voter. I love when we get Hall of Fame voters on.
That's true. We got 9 months or so to wait on this one since they do put them in February, but it's never a problem to look ahead to the Hall of Fame. Gary Myers will join us in about 18 minutes, coming back here next on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
You got Johnny Mac and Johnny Mac doing you on Birds 365, a football Friday as free agency week continues. Most of the big names have come off the board, but there are still some out there, two of which for me are Philadelphia Eagles. One we were just talking about, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The other one that we've talked very little about is Isaac Seumalo. When free agency started, there were two guys on the Eagles that I thought had a very good chance of being elsewhere, and that was Javon Hargrave. And if Jason Kelsey re-signed here in Philadelphia, then that was pretty much a death knell for Isaac Seumalo. The Eagles only have so much money to go around. And Howie Roseman's done a really nice job at divvying up the cap flexibility that he did have, which probably painted Isaac out the door. If you believe that you can just move Cam Jurgens from backup center to starting right guard, Isaac should probably land elsewhere. Have you heard any rumors about Isaac?
I heard the Bears early, but then the Bears signed Nate Davis, who's a guard from Tennessee. So that kind of closed that door. No, it's been very quiet. I'm sure very disappointing from Isaacs. I think it has to do with his foot injury. That was a very, very serious Lisfranc fracture. If you remember, he had 2 surgeries, couldn't walk for about 6 months. That's the kind of stuff.
How do you play this year?
Which is amazing. But, you know, when people look at it, and Les brought up a good comparison earlier in the week, Les Bowen with Jay Ajayi. Look, everybody knew Jay Ajayi could play, but all the medical people said, not going to be long. Shelf life isn't going to be great. So it's about more than he got back on the field and played at a high level. But if you have team doctors out there saying, well, it's not going to be long, it's going to break down again. That's part of it where I think a lot of people don't think about the medicals. And that's why it gets talked about more around draft picks. And we always talk about the combine. By far, the most important part of the combine is the medical evaluations, not the stuff going on the field. By far, the most important part for NFL teams is the medical evaluation. And I don't even know if this is true, Joe, but that all I can speculate because he played.
I'm asking you to speculate. You're speculating.
He played at such a high level, and guards aren't going to get paid a ton, but he's a better player than Nate Davis, who's not a bad player, but and the Bears made their decision, and they had a ton of money to play with and still do. So yeah, it's very disappointing. Was it, I was thinking about it. Who did I think was definitely leaving? It was Hargrave, it was TJ, it was Miles, and it was Isaac. Those were the guys I thought were definitely leaving. In TJ's case, I thought he was going to get more than he got. Miles, I think, got a nice deal. What he should have gotten. Javon, what he should have gotten, what we thought he was going to get, 20 million plus. And then, Isaac, bit of a surprise to me. And that's all I can think of.
Right, because like I said, I like Nick Davis. I think he's a good player. I know that Isaac Seumalo's been a better player than him to this point. How does he get 10 million per? And again, who knows? Maybe there's a team out there that's going to jump in and say, oh, yeah, we'll give you what you want. But it doesn't look that way. Same way with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. There may be one team. Only takes one. There's an overused.
And dare we say, could the Eagles get him back? You start thinking that way. Can the Eagles get him back? Because all these people, and Jeff just brought it up. Oh, you can't sit a second-round pick for 2. Why not? Sure, you can. He was picked to be a center. He's still cost-effective. It was a luxury pick to begin with. Why the hell not? Can't you sit him for 2 years? The short answer is, yeah, you can sit him for 2 years.
And right, wrong, or indifferent, we've judged Howie Roseman as a guy who's got a little sentimentality attached to him. That if you did it for the Eagles for a period of time, you were a contributor to a winning team, maybe he'll go the extra mile for you. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. Well, why wouldn't Isaac Seumalo fall into that same category?
Yeah, I mean, he loves Stout. Everybody loves Stout. Yeah, I mean, the longer it goes on, the more I start thinking, obviously, that the Eagles can get him back on a cost-effective deal. And why wouldn't they want him back? Stoutland loves him. He loves the team. He loves Stoutland. Very comfortable in this
system. The guy who was left loves him too.
Yeah. Well,
Kelsey loves
Kelsey and Lane. Lane loves him. You get to play in between Kelsey and Lane. I mean, why not? The longer it goes, that's the way I'd be thinking. I'd say, Isaac, and I'm sure Howie's done this. We'd love to have you back. This is what we can do. If you make your decision.
And as much love as we pour on the Eagles offensive line coach, which we should, you can only make water out of wine so many times. And there is the possibility of injury. All right, Kelsey never gets hurt. Never mind center. But Lane Johnson.
Oh, he always gets hurt. He just plays through it.
Right, plays right through it. The Eagles stayed relatively healthy on the offensive line last year. Lane at the end of the season, but he shortly played through that. But the left side stayed healthy pretty much all year long. What did the backup offensive lineman who ended up going free agent this year, Dillard, how many games did he start last year? One? Am I allowed to miss one?
Yeah, I think he only missed one. And
missed
came
one.
Back.
And Dickerson stayed healthy basically all year. Kelsey all year. Isaac all year. And Lane got hurt at the end of the year. That's pretty healthy along the offensive line. To bank on that kind of health for second consecutive year, you're probably going against the percentages. So if you can get Isaac Seumalo back, which keeps your second-round draft pick from last year in the jack of all trades fill-in, he's going to be our guy if anybody goes down in the interior of our line. That's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Andre didn't even start one game because
one
Jordan
game he didn't start
back.
one.
He played significantly when Jordan got hurt in that Jacksonville game, but then Jordan came back. That's what I was checking. He came back. He probably shouldn't have. The Eagles at first thought that was a season-ending injury for Jordan Mailata. And that was a big break. We just talked about it at corner. That's one of the big stories about the Eagles season is how healthy they were as a whole. Offensive line, corner, they were very healthy as a whole. And that stuff tends to regress to the mean a little bit. So you're right. You're right.
Did Dickerson start all 17?
I'd have to look it up. I don't recall him. I recall he was banged up a little bit, but
I know Dillard jumped in and played some guard.
Yeah, he would come in. He had an injury and he would leave for a few games, but he would always come back.
Right.
Those guys tend to be very, very tough, and Kelsey as well. I mean, I've seen I can't tell you at least 2 or 3 times over the past few years. I've said, all right, Kelsey's out for the season because the injury looks so significant. Now he just comes right back in. But I'm trying to look up Landon as we speak. As a whole, tremendous, obviously, health. And look, I give the Eagles training staff credit. But I don't know, there's certain things you can't control. And, injuries is one of them. But yeah, Landon played all 17, started all 17. Now he missed a bunch of snaps. I believe it was an ankle injury, and he kept coming in and coming out, things like that.
So, and because we haven't heard any major rumors from around the league, it's legit to ask the question, what number would they be willing to bring him back at? If it's a really team-friendly deal, then you got to snap it up. But if it's a close to what Nate Davis got, I think he's a better player. But again, same thing I said earlier in the show about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. There's your opinion, and once you get to free agency, there's 32 other opinions. And when you put it on the scale, 32 outweighs one every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So I think if you're not going to get what you thought you should get or believed you should get, well, then you got to adjust your thinking. And if it brings the Eagles back into the ballpark, I hope they just haven't dismissed the possibility.
I hope so, too. That's my concern. Because my concern, I knew pretty much that the Eagles were going to move on from Miles Sanders, even if he didn't get the deal he was looking for. Like, I think they wanted a change at running back. And I think it was more Howie driven than Nick driven, but nonetheless, I think they were looking for a change. I hope they're not just saying what others are saying, that, well, we drafted Cam Jurgens, he's got to play this year. I don't think they're saying that. I don't know why they would be saying that. They drafted him to play center. Why move him to guard? Like, if you have to, you have to. And Isaac walks and gets $10 million a year, you have to. But if you don't have to, why would you not want the Pro Bowl alternate guard? And I would argue he should have made the Pro Bowl. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
if you can get him back.
Right. And the league will help dictate it. He knows what the offers are that are out there right now. Hopefully the offers are in the Eagles ballpark. Again, here's the one thing we know about the Eagles. They've done a great job, how he always does, managing the cap and creating room. They still haven't got the Jalen Hurts deal done. And I'm sure they have a
worried
number.
About that. Are people worried about that? I don't know why. I don't know why. It's not if, it's when. It's not, there shouldn't be any consternation that they're not Baltimore. They're going to get it done. I don't know if there's any consternation because of Lamar Jackson. I guess that would be the only consternation
In play
fully
right now, but
guaranteed deal.
in my estimation, it's legit.
I wouldn't worry about it. They're not. I'll say this: they're not losing Jalen Hurts. They're not losing Jalen Hurts.
Here's and I think you and I look at this different. We end up in the same place, but we get there differently. I'm not worried about it, but not because I know the deal is going to get done. I'm not worried about it because if there are hurdles along the way, Lamar Jackson being one of them, Hurts, Herbert being a potential one, Burrow being a potential one, Jalen Hurts will be fine. If it drags on and it didn't get done, and media guys like Jody McDonald or John McMullen or Sal Palantonio or anybody on WIP and Marcus Hayes start, well, why isn't it done? Well, the Eagles disrespect, but Jalen Hurts will be fine. There are certain individuals who will go down that immediate disrespect road. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Jalen Hurts will just keep his mouth shut. Jalen Hurts will just show up and play like the leader that he is. Jalen Hurts will not let his contract negotiation affect his play, which should be the number one concern, because that's the only thing that you worry about is if you can't get a deal done, what's a guy thinking while you're still negotiating and trying to get it done? I've seen teams go awry because of mishandled negotiations. I don't fear that at all with Jalen Hurts because of the player that he is. Do I just it'll get done because why? Because they got Carson Wentz done, so they got to. This is a little bit different. The quarterback market continues to change. It continues to go up. How he has had to do what he's had to do to keep the roster intact. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but I don't think it's the potential downfall of the Philadelphia.
And I do go back to Carson. I look it up. June 6th. June 1st is a key date. All right. So if you do want to get concerned, and again, my advice is to not be concerned. But if you do want to get concerned, don't get concerned until June 1st and the days after June 1st. That's a big date on the NFL calendar. That's when a lot of things flip from a salary cap standpoint. It's much more likely the deal, if it's coming this offseason, and I believe it is, it's much more likely it will happen early June than right now. But nonetheless,
because there were a lot of people, John, not you or I, but a lot of people said, oh, they'll get it done before free agency ever kicks in.
No,
it wasn't.
No,
they'll get this thing done. It's Harry Roseman, it's Jalen Hurts. No. And now we'll be several weeks in the free agency and it still won't be done. And yes, they'll have the draft and it still won't be done. So those who said it's going to get done in a matter of days, a matter of weeks. No, I think it's going into June. I firmly believe that. And yeah, I do believe the Lamar Jackson's the only one, because I think both Herbert and Burrow are going to have to wait. I don't think their teams, they've got another year to wait. They don't have to get anything done because they got a 5-year contract that's first-round draft picks. So they got more flexibility than the Eagles do. The Lamar Jackson contract is the key domino that's got to fall first before Hurts gets done.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar complicates things a little bit, but I don't think it complicates things that much. And yeah, I would say early June would be my target area for.
All right, this is one of the things we want to run by our next guest. He's been covering the entire league for decades. Gary Myers is going to jump aboard next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather. The team you trust.
Got Mac and Mac doing you on Birds 365. Appreciate you streaming in with us. Feel free to hit that like button. Hopefully you liked the last 35 minutes of the show, because Gary Myers is going to be part of it. Our buddy, longtime NFL columnist and NFL author. All right, let's get this out of the way right away. When is the Giant book coming out?
Oh, September 12th. Once a Giant. The story of victory, tragedy, and life after football.
He's got a great book coming out in September. We'll certainly have him on between now and then, and we'll be promoting up until it hits the better bookshelves out there. But Gary, thank you very much for joining us today. You've been doing this for years. Free agency kicked in decades ago now. Yeah, we're all getting old. How does this year's class movement compare to other years? Any different? Any place where you've seen surprising aggression? Any place where you've seen, wow, there's a drop-off from what it used to be there? How do you think the free agent market has played this offseason in the 4 days it's been in action?
Well, we're kind of conditioned now that you never get, the big time quarterbacks ever to make it to free agency. I mean, Peyton Manning obviously did, but there were extenuating circumstances there. Tom Brady did. Again, extenuating circumstances, guys towards the end of their careers.
Lamar's pretty big, Gary Myers.
Well, but Lamar is, he's just a different case because, Jody, how many teams are going to pay him what he wants, give up 2 number 1 picks for a player that the last 2 years has proven to be injury prone, who to this point in his career has not had any success in the playoffs? Now, I would do it. Like, if I would do it if I was the Jets, if this Aaron Rodgers thing doesn't work out. I think it will work out. I would do it if you're a team that has never been able to find a quarterback. You just take a shot with it, and maybe the Ravens won't match. But I don't think this is a true no-brainer like people are portraying it to be. Oh, Lamar Jackson's out there. You got to give up 2 number 1 picks for him. Well, when you dig a little deeper, there are some holes in the resume that you have to be a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, how many times do you think, Gary, we saw it here in Philadelphia with Darius Slay over the past couple of days, giving Drew permission to seek a trade. In Lamar's case, a lot of people have speculated, hey, Baltimore, we can't get it done. Go out and see what you're worth, if we put the tag on you. How often do you think teams utilize that? Go out and see the market and then come back and see if you're being realistic or unrealistic.
Yeah, John, it's not only if you give a guy a franchise tag, but there's a lot of times just strictly in free agency, if you can't reach an agreement and you have a good relationship with the agent, you say, go shop yourself and give us an opportunity to match or do a little better, because we obviously can't come to an agreement on our own. So let's see what the market will bear. Now, there's obviously a lot of risks in that.
Yeah,
because another team might say, just use the case of Darius Slay, just say that the Giants, who need a second corner, blew him away with an offer but prefaced it all by saying, take it or leave it right here, because you go shop it back to the Eagles, the offer's off the table. So then the player runs the risk. Teams understand that they're getting used by agents, and they do try to control that. The Lamar situation is different because it's built in that the Ravens have the opportunity to match or not, and then or take the 2 number 1s. So you could just, in that case, strictly be doing the Ravens' work for him, and a lot of teams might be hesitant about that. If you're complete UFA, you can try to say to the player, like I just mentioned, this phone call isn't ending without an answer from you. And if you say, I got to think about it, then you don't have this option anymore. So, there are all kinds of games that the agents and the teams use to try to manipulate each other to do what's best for themselves.
All right, Gary, need your take on this, because the Eagles are certainly involved in this offseason. They decided to move away from Miles Sanders. Miles signs a free agent contract with Carolina, the best free agent contract that any running back has gotten, at over $6 million per. Eagles bring in Rashad Penny for much less than that. Incentives at most are going to take it to $2 million. All the free agent signings around the National Football League. The biggest deal, more than anything else, was Ezekiel Elliott getting released rather than somebody signing with someone. I heard many quote unquote NFL experts, I'm not putting either of you two guys in this mix, but there's a cyclical change in the NFL. The running game is coming back. The teams are now coming back to the running. It's not as pass heavy as it once was. Well, you can't tell that by this year's offseason activity at the running back position. Nobody got paid. The Miles is the top guy and didn't even sniff $7 million a season. Was that an overstatement this year? If you agree with me that you heard it, first, please tell me if you heard the same thing I did. Oh, here comes the running game, because the NFL is cyclical like it is. The running game is on the rebound and on the way back. I didn't see it in the free agent offseason signings. Did you?
Well, we talked about a couple minutes ago. I don't think, when you asked me what kind of free agent class this has been, there are really no outright game changers, either wide receiver or running back in this class that would command that kind of money. Now, Saquon Barkley might have been if the Giants didn't franchise him. I'm not even sure about that because of his injury history and the fact that, history has proven that when you get to this point, you have to be in the league for 5 years or so, that a running back, his productivity declines at that point. I do agree that, well, let me say this. I never thought the importance of the running back had diminished or should have diminished because the teams that go far in the playoffs are still the ones that can control the game in the fourth quarter by running the ball. But I think the team's emphasis on using high draft picks and spending a lot of money on running backs, that's changed because they feel you can find guys in the second, third, and fourth round who can be extremely effective without having to use a first-round pick. Now, I think it's going to be interesting. A test case will be with Bijan Robinson from Texas, who everybody's raving about. Now, where's the Eagles' first-round pick this year?
Number 10.
Okay.
Number 10.
So to me, that would be – I knew it was really high. To me, that would be the pressure point here, that he obviously would be a tremendous fit in Philadelphia if he lasts that far, and I think that he will. But will the Eagles buck the trend of taking running backs really high and take this guy who could be a real game changer and perhaps reduce the stress on Jalen Hurts and the need to have him keep running the ball by having an elite running back? You saw how effective Ezekiel Elliott was in his first few years.
Yeah, people forget that. People forget that, Gary, and they say the big deal. But yeah, it's a short window, so it's difficult when you talk about valuation. And the Giants, let's talk about your wheelhouse, as you mentioned. They had that, going back and forth with Daniel Jones. They would have had to use the franchise tag, but they got it done, and they used it on Saquon. So with Daniel Jones, 4 years, 160, we all know, a lot of funny money in there. But the contract as a whole, they can get out after 2024. And I think that last year, the cap hit is $56.5 million. So, it's going to be restructured either way by the time that last year comes around. Do you think the Giants had to do it? Do you think they made the right decision? They overachieved, a lot of improvements, but that's a big outlay for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I mean, they can get out after a couple of years, like you say, but it'll still cost them over the first 2 years around $80 million, which is, an unbelievable amount of money. As recently as the opening game last season and a month into the season, we were saying that Daniel Jones was playing for his job in New York. I don't think there's any question that was the theme of last season. And John Mara had said a year ago, we've done everything we can to screw this kid up. They kept changing head coaches and offensive coordinators on him and not getting him skill position players, which they still don't have. They got Darren Waller the other day, so that obviously will help. But this is a guy who barely threw for 3,000 yards last year and had 15 touchdown passes. Now he ran for a lot, like 700 yards, and scored 7 on the ground. But that's not. That has become a new metric in how we're rating quarterbacks, is what they can do with their legs. But I don't think we've come close to reaching the point of teams going, oh, man, we got to stop Daniel Jones on Sunday or we got no shot. He played great in the playoff victory against the Vikings, against, and excuse my language here, a really crappy defense.
Yes, a really crappy defense.
Right. And then we saw what happened the next week against the Eagles, where the Giants were completely outclassed and he did next to nothing that game. Again, not his fault because he had no receivers that, kept anybody up at night. But I guarantee you the Giants will remake their skill position rooms before they hit opening day in September. They're going to go heavy on wide receivers. I think they'll take a wide receiver in the first round of this draft. They signed Paris Campbell yesterday, and that could be a decent signing for him. Darren Waller will give them their best receiving tight end, probably since Jeremy Shockey. And if Barkley continues on this path for a little while, where he was a really effective running back last year, then they improved. They still have to get a couple pieces on the offensive line, but they can do all that in the draft, and free agency really just started. we will get a true indication then if the Giants overreacted and how they handled Jones in the offseason by giving him all this money, or whether they invested in somebody who can eventually get them to the Super Bowl. They had to retain him at least for this season, because really, what are the options? They're picking in the 20s, so they're not going to get a quarterback in this draft. Tyrod Taylor is their backup. There was nobody on the market this year that, maybe they could have gotten involved in the Aaron Jones drama, but I doubt it. That's not really the Giants' style. So, and they like Jones. They thought he really progressed with Brian Daboll last year after having really bad coaching in the 2 years of Joe Judge. He played well his rookie year with Pat Shurmur, but then they got rid of Shurmur and started this whole parade of new coaches and offensive coordinators. So the bottom line is, I think they had to sign him. I'm not sure Giant fans are looking at Daniel Jones go, gee, $40 million for that guy?
Now,
really?
you what? I love Brian Daboll. So I love him as a coach. Now, I've heard.
That's because you kind of look like him a little bit, John.
A little bit, yeah. Well, poor Brian. But yeah, but I'll take it. Brandon Graham says I look like Bruce Arians, but only when I have the Kangol hat on. So, when you talk about Brian and scheming up Daniel Jones, what's the thought process in the building? I mean, do they think he schemed him up? Because that's a lot. I wouldn't think they think that way, because I'm not giving $40 million plus and $80 million over 2 years to a quarterback I think the coach schemed up. So they have to think more of Daniel Jones than that,
they
right?
do. They do. But I mean, when you say schemed him up, I look at it more like he played to his strengths and incorporated his legs into the equation. Like, you don't want to continue that as much as they did this past season, because guys get hurt. Even though he's a big, strong guy, it's only a matter of time before a running quarterback gets hurt. But he was able to just settle things down. I mean, after Jason Garrett lasted a year and a half, and then it was Freddie Kitchens, and before that, like I said, Shurmur did a decent job with him. But scheming a guy up, I mean, there's different ways to interpret that. The way you're phrasing it is, he overcame Jones's weaknesses by trickery and doing things that maybe he won't be able to get away with when teams study the tape. I look at it more like he identified what Jones did really well, played to his strengths, made tremendous progress last year, and everybody in the Giants building is convinced that that was just the first step, that now let's give him some elite targets to throw to. I mean, when Isaiah Hodgins is your number one target in the playoffs, a guy that got cut by the way,
I love that kid. He played well. I don't know if he can continue.
Right. He played well, but is he A.J. Brown?
No.
Okay. So how far are you going to go in the playoffs when that's your best receiver? Now, they like him, and he'll definitely make the team this year. But if he's any better than the second receiver on their team, then their offseason has failed. I mean, they need a true number one receiver, and it can't necessarily be Darren Waller. They need somebody on the outside that's going to command double teams and scare some people.
All right, GM, I want to move from one New York team to the other one. If Aaron Rodgers had come out of the darkness and decided he was either a Packer or he was an ex-NFL quarterback, or he was going to host Jeopardy or go back into the darkness or whatever else, would the Jets have signed the wide receiver that they signed for $44 million? Would Alan Lazard be a New York Jet if Aaron Rodgers were not still open to the possibility of becoming the quarterback of the Jets?
Absolutely not, because receiver is one of the Jets' strengths, actually.
Exactly.
I mean, they got the rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore will have a better year. I mean, he just got lost last year. I don't know what happened. Denzel Mims has shown some flashes. Corey Davis is a serviceable vet at this point. He drops too many passes, but and he'll probably get traded or cut. He might even be in the Rodgers trade. But I think going into the offseason, you wouldn't look at the wide receiver and say, this is an area that Jets got to build on. Obviously, in their talks, and Aaron Rodgers said this, the Jets said, give us a wish list, or here's what we're thinking about. What do you think of this guy? There's no doubt there was collaboration here with Rodgers and the Jets in signing Allen Lazard. And they'll probably sign Randall Cobb also, and he wants Mercedes Lewis. And all these guys will help, but whether they're priorities or not, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have
Randall
said
Cobb and Mercedes Lewis. I mean, Aaron's look. Jody will tell you, Gary. Nobody has more respect for Aaron Rodgers and his skill set than me, but he's kind of intimated in the past that Green Bay hasn't always got him the best weapons, and then he wants Randall Cobb back all the time, and he wants Mercedes Lewis back all the time. I mean, which one is it, Aaron? You got to come out of the darkness when it comes. You got Garrett Wilson with the Jets, as you mentioned. I mean, that's a playmaker.
He's a terrific young player, and I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the best wide receivers in the league for a bunch of years. The funniest thing and the most incredible lack of credibility statement that Rodgers said the other day is that he went into the darkness 90% convinced he was retiring.
He was going to retire, yeah.
$60 million. I bet his $60 million that he was not going to retire. I don't care how much money you make or how much money you have or have put away, or if he has a smart knowledge. I don't think that he has. Nobody's walking away from $60 million. Come on. I mean, that's the most foolish thing I've heard.
Yeah.
You're telling me he was going to make $5 million this year. Well, I don't know. It's all incentives. I don't know if I can win with the Jets. If it's incentive-based contract, I'm not going to take the risk of getting hurt and hurting my legacy. $60 million. Give me
a break. Remember, Gary, you don't need electricity in a yurt, so you don't need that $60 million.
There must have been like a voice in the darkness there said, Aaron, are you freaking crazy? And maybe it was his accountant.
No, you're all wrong. You know who whispered in his ear?
Tell me.
Jake from State Farm.
Jake,
that you can't be walking away from $50 million.
I'll
give you the best deal that I can, but you're going to actually have to pay for a little insurance, Aaron. So I'd take the $50 million if it was Jake from State Farm. Talked to him into coming back this year.
Did you notice it was either this past season or the year before? The Jake from State Farm commercials were 95% Patrick Mahomes, and every now and then the Aaron Rodgers spot.
Yeah, he got phased out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing with the vaccination.
He's immunized. I think that hit hit State Farm hard.
Andy Reid was more viable in the State Farm commercials than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I can't wait for his introductory press conference here. And I would feel the same way if it was in Philadelphia or any of these cities that really care.
Yeah.
Because, there's always this thing that, the tough New York media. Philadelphia media is much tougher than New York media. There's just more of the media.
There's more of us. Yeah. No, there's more of us, Gary.
You think?
The Eagles have they constantly complain about this. They have the largest media contingency day to day. Now, they've been trying to phase people out because they have too many people. But yeah, it's astonishing because you would think New York would have more. And they might between the Giants and Jets.
Well, I was going to say that when Rodgers has his press conference, the world will as it is here in New York,
more.
will descend on Florham Park. But I'm really curious. Now I know if I was there, and I'm not going to go because I don't have a paper to write for these days. But I would turn back the clock and ask him some of these questions about some of the stupid stuff that he's been doing over the last few years. And I hope he does get grilled on it and they make him accountable. I'm not saying they didn't make him accountable in Green Bay, but it's time to revisit some of these outrageous things that he's been saying the last few years. I think it's going to be incredibly fascinating. I'm so happy the Jets are getting him because it's just going to be fun to hear what he can get away with here.
Yeah. And by the way, forget about the NFL Network, ESPN. and other outlets will cover it live. There is going to be no hiding for Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, absolutely.
That will be a
It's
big
not
day.
Green Bay, that's for sure. It is
right.
not Green Bay. Where's Joe Douglas with the Jets? I have tremendous respect for Joe.
What do you mean? Where is he in terms of what?
As in terms of, is he GMing for his job this year, for lack of a better term? Is he? How sound is his footing at Florham Park?
That's a really good question. And I would answer it this way: that I do think this, especially if they get Rodgers, and they will get Rodgers, and we haven't yet talked about the little game that's going on between the Jets and the Packers right now. But assuming they get Rodgers, I think that Douglas and Saleh have to make the playoffs this year. That their long-term future in New York will be determined by the success on the field. The Jets are a win-now team. Douglas has done an excellent job since he's been here in building up the team, but he hasn't found his quarterback yet. And you can't win without a quarterback. So if they don't win this year with Aaron Rodgers, then now I don't think they should get rid of him, but he swung and missed on the biggest decision that he's had to make since he's here, and that was Zach Wilson. If you remember that draft, other than Trevor Lawrence, there was just a bunch of guys that nobody knew if they were going to be great or not. And I had advocated before that draft, and I remember they still had Sam Darnold, who had gotten horrible coaching from Adam Gase. I had advocated that the Jets give Darnold one more year and take that second pick and trade down a couple of times. If you remember, that's what the Dolphins did. I think the Dolphins were picking third. They traded back to 15th. They traded back up and got Jalen Waddle. And they got a bunch of extra draft choices. They used one of those picks to trade to Denver to get Bradley Chubb. So the Dolphins really maneuvered around the draft board really well. And that's what, before the Dolphins made those moves, I was saying that's what the Jets should have done. We had heard that the 49ers love Zach Wilson, and that's who they wanted to move up to get. They made the trade hoping that the Jets wouldn't take Wilson and then took Trey Lance. But it wasn't like the Jets were the only team that liked Zach Wilson.
The Eagles loved him. Eagles loved Zach Wilson, Gary.
So there were a lot of teams that felt that way. But when I looked at him, just a little bit of the highlights that I saw a guy look really small on the field, who won over the Jets by running left and throwing right on his pro day and throwing it 50 yards down the field. And he's really good with running around. I'll give him that. With the running around part, where the ball winds up is a different story. But I didn't think he was. I thought the drop off from Trevor Lawrence to the number 2 quarterback in that draft was so severe that the Jets did not have to take that guy at number 2. They could have just tried to build a team around Darnold, who was the 3rd pick in the draft just 3 years earlier. And then if he stunk that year, then you figure it out. But you use that draft currency there to turn it into a cottage industry like the Dolphins did, and get prime picks for it, rather than take a quarterback who still looks like he's in junior high school, both facially and size wise, and really did nothing in 2 years to back up the idea that the Jets knew what they were doing. So that's my long way of saying that Joe Douglas has made really good personnel decisions, except at the most important position.
Right. And I was well on the record as I would have played the trade down game too.
Yeah.
Probably not as far down as he eventually went, but I did not think there was much of a drop off at all between 1 and 2, even though most of the league did. I was a Justin Fields guy. I thought he should have been a Jets pick at number 2. Boom, just take him, move on, get on with your life. Better than
Joe. They could have traded down. Where'd the Bears get him? Is the Giants
11?
Pick? Right. So the Jets could have traded down twice to get to 11.
Right. But you didn't know he was going to go at 11, but they should have traded at least once, and they should have ended up with Fields, not Wilson.
But obviously they didn't.
Last thing for you, GM. I think you've already answered this, but I want you to confirm it. Saleh and Douglas tied at the hip. Both stay, both go. Is there a chance that if they do or don't make the trade, whatever else, Saleh is not retained, but Douglas gets to keep his job, or are they a package deal?
No, I think if one of them is going to stay, it'll be Douglas, because you can't keep the coach and get rid of the general manager and then force the general manager to work with a coach he didn't hire.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. The Jets tried that a few years ago with John Idzik when he replaced Tannenbaum, and then they kept Rex.
Disaster.
I don't think they're necessarily tied at the hip, but you also have to remember that Woody Johnson didn't hire Joe Douglas. I mean, he was doing whatever he was doing in London at that point as the ambassador. So Douglas is not Woody's guy. And so I don't know what his loyalty is to him at this point, what kind of relationship they've built. But the feeling here in New York is that for sure, 100%, Sal's got to make the playoffs this year to keep his job. And depending on how the season goes, the same could be true of Douglas. I don't think Douglas should be on the hot seat, only because he has done their roster is really good. But just the fact that they're going to bring in a 39-year-old quarterback who I think is going to be 40 at some point in the season just shows the desperation that they feel and the urgency they feel right now to win. And some of that obviously is tied to, hey, we got to win to keep our jobs. This whole Rodgers thing, I think, will get settled before the draft, though.
GM, it's always fun catching up. We appreciate you jumping in with us today. We'll certainly get you on again as the season moves on, probably before the draft, as a matter of fact. See who can make those.
Gary, I want to sneak in real quick. I forgot. I want to sneak into your Pro Football Hall of Fame selector status. I don't know. This is probably an unfair question, but I don't know how far you look ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of Fletcher Cox and his status as a potential down the line player?
Well, you guys know the Jets made a pretty good run at him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were talking about it on the show earlier.
John, I think that the fact that he's a Super Bowl champ and got to another Super Bowl and has been a mainstay of that defense for extended period of time, the best way I can answer that is he deserves serious consideration. But the fact that I haven't obviously dug deep into his career, and I've seen him play a lot in all those Giants-Eagles games, and he was always a guy you had to be concerned about. But the best I can say at this point is I'm certain he will get serious consideration. Whether or not he's a Hall of Fame player remains to be seen. Let me throw one back at you guys if you got a second, okay?
Sure.
Because this is like the biggest issue that I think I'll be looking at in the next couple of years. Do you guys think that Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer?
Yeah,
I do not.
You and I have already had this conversation.
Yeah,
I know.
I've had this discussion a lot as well. I do not. I'm more of a consistency guy more than Super Bowl championships. I think he will be a Hall of Famer. I think the 2 rings will get him over the top. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player. That's just my spin on it.
And Gary, because you and I have discussed it on the air. I just don't. John and I are in the exact same place. If I'm handicapping Gary Myers et al. And all your buddies, and usually you guys do a phenomenal job, I think he's going to get in. If you're asking me my opinion, and if I had a vote, would I vote for him? The answer is no.
Well, the big thing has become now so much status is attached to whether a guy gets in first ballot. And so that's going to be the real issue for me. I think I agree with you. I think he will get in. I think he deserves to get in. The issue, and I'm going to try hard for him because that's kind of what we're supposed to do when you make a presentation. And Bob Glauber, who used to be at Newsday, he makes the giant presentations and then anybody else can speak. I look at it this way, and I'm not trying to convince you because you guys know what his career was all about. He never won a playoff game in any season other than the 2 that he won the Super Bowl. But that's a big other than. That he won 2 Super Bowls, was 8-0 in those 2 years, beat an undefeated Patriots team the first time around in the Super Bowl, beat in the playoffs Brett Favre at Lambeau, Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau, and in each of his 2 Super Bowl victories had 2-minute drives at the end of the game to beat the Patriots. if that's not what a Hall of Famer is supposed to do, then I'm not sure. Why would Warren Moon? That one just popped into my head.
Now, I didn't think Warren would get
numbers.
in. But here's the thing with Peyton. I'll say this, Gary.
Mhm.
Like, I think Peyton is the greatest regular season quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
I think, when Indianapolis
What
started
do you think is the best postseason quarterback of all time?
I'm going to go Tom.
Yeah.
But, you can make an argument for Joe, but Tom was there so much.
Right.
I would lean towards Tom, but I think Peyton is consistency. When Indianapolis started a year, you knew they were 10 wins was a bad season.
Right.
Bad season. They were going to win 12, 13, or 14 was a good season. That's how consistent he was from week to week. I think the rest of the seasons, he had 2 great runs. Eli, unbelievable. But what if Tyree doesn't make the catch? What if Asante Samuel makes the interception? Even having the conversation?
John, you cannot play that game, the if game. What if Santonio Holmes doesn't make that sideline?
I agree. But I think that's what I mean.
You can say that about any game in the history of the NFL other than the blowouts. What if?
But I agree. I agree with you, Gary. But my only point is you can't say that about Peyton because of the consistency. There's the consistency from week to week to week to week, the greatness from week to week to week. There's no ifs. This guy, ifs with Peyton.
Let me throw this one out. What if the tuck rule, whatever the tuck rule was and no longer is,
no doubt about it.
Charles Woods makes the hit. The Raiders recover the ball. They win the game.
Oh, no doubt about it. How many more
career?
does Tom have, though? How many more does Tom have? I mean,
right, but would that have happened?
Right. I don't need to play the what if.
Without that first
here's
one,
what I know.
the others
Eli
have
Manning had 2 phenomenal, unquestionable Hall of Fame seasons in a how many year career?
Yeah.
Is that enough to put him in? No what ifs. Is his 2-year unbelievable run enough to get him in? For me, it's too short. For others,
I think Brady would have won multiple Super Bowls, regardless of that tuck rule, because he was that good.
Yeah. Now I get your point.
I'm just saying
effect.
that first one, did it lead to the second and the third and the fourth because of the confidence? Rather than just having one playoff game that year under his belt and losing it, they go on and win in Pittsburgh. They beat the Rams, and the Tom Brady magic started. So, but I'm not going to look back at his career and say, well, what happens if that Raiders?
It's fair point.
I mean, Tyree, listen, we can talk forever about this one. Tyree made an unbelievable catch. Was it a lucky catch? Of course it was. Should Mike Carey, who was the referee in that game, called in the grasp before Eli even got rid of the ball? In a regular season game, that play would have been whistled dead. He let it go because of the magnitude of the moment, which wasn't fair to the Patriots because as we learned on the Bradbury thing, it doesn't matter what part of the game.
That's exactly where it's going. In the moment, should they have thrown the flag against Bradbury? No, because they hadn't done it all game.
Exactly. That's why the Bradbury flag should never have been thrown.
We got to do it with beers, not with coffee. We can't do this what-if game this early in the morning. We will definitely do it again down the road. Thanks for hopping in, brother. We'll call you again.
You guys are great.
Gary. Appreciate it, man.
That is Gary Myers, longtime NFL.
I get you. I love Gary. I love the Hall of Fame guys. I had to sneak the Fletcher in because I was talking about it, and I don't get Eagles fans who dislike him, and that's what I thought. I'm not saying he's going.
By the way, well, then I'll ask you last question because we got to wrap this up. Is Fletcher Cox a Hall of Famer?
I think he is, but I thought
really?
I thought Gary
he's Hall
would
of Famer?
I thought Gary would give me the answer. He's going to get serious consideration. Yeah, because I know those guys. I know how they think, and when Gary delves into it, he's going to see that 2010 All-Decade team, and he's going to see all the All-Pro nods, and I think he's going to lean towards getting Fletcher in. They really rely on that stuff. When you make an All-Decade team, that's something. And he's already getting.
And you want to know something? I think that's BS. What if your 10 years run from 05 to 15? Do you get screwed?
I'm not. Sometimes I'm not saying it, it's too hard and fast. Usually, guys, you look at the history. It's very rare that somebody doesn't make an all-decade team and doesn't go to the Hall of Fame. And I agree with you. I think they lean on that too much. But it is what it is. And I think he's a borderline candidate. And I think that gets him over the top. Is my point. Like Eli, I don't think Eli's a Hall of Famer, but I think he's getting in. I think
much more important is years making all-pro than making an all-decade. Because an all-decade just is coincidence. Your career happened to line up with...
Well, it's not coincidence. You got to be really good to make an all-decade team. Yeah, you're right. The timing's got to work out as well. But you got to be really good to make an all-decade team. So I get part of what you're saying, but there's no... Some guys might get screwed, but if you make an all-decade team, that means you're really, really, really good.
But there's a possibility that a guy could make an all-decade team who makes first team all-pro twice. But if it lines up perfectly, and you could have a guy whose career starts in 05 and goes to 05, and he could make 6 first team all-pros and still not make all-decade. Who's the better player? The guy who makes 6 first team all-pros or the guy who makes 2 all-pros?
Tone's yelling at us. We got to get out of here. But I was a minute late, Tone, so we got an extra minute.
All right. Quickie timeout. We'll come back, put a bow on the show.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather. The team you trust.
All right, we're well over, so we're getting out of Dodge pretty damn quickly. Just one question for you, John McMullen. You swung and missed on this one, so I'm going to give you a second chance here. will Chauncey Gardner-Johnson be signed somewhere by the time we come back on Monday morning?
Yes. I'm going to keep going. Yes.
Gonna
He's got to sign at some
down that
point.
road again. You got 48 this time. Last time was only 22 or 46.
I
thought hours to get this one right.
I thought I was going to be right too. I thought he was signing that day. Yeah, I think he's upset with the market, but at some point you got to realize you got to come to a conclusion. The longer he waits, it's only going down. People go different directions, budgets shorten. He better make a decision quick, disrespect or no. You got to play somewhere, and he's going to make a decision. I'm going to recede to the darkness, and he's going to make a decision for a couple of days.
All right, we'll see if he does by the time we get back here. You get Mac and Mac right back here on Monday, second week of free agency. We'll be here in 2 and 2 days, that is.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.